If you understand anything about the mind, you would know that part of the solution is always, what do you want? Because otherwise you can't focus on not anxiety. You can't focus on not sadness. You can only move towards things.
"83% of Americans identify as not very happy, which can hold you back and negatively affect your relationships and your business." On this podcast, we discuss the proven steps to happiness so you can restore balance and rekindle your joy.
Welcome, happypreneurs, to another episode of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. I can't wait for this episode. We have an amazing guest who has an amazing story and is doing amazing things in this world. Michael, welcome to the show. How are you, buddy?
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm doing great.
Awesome. So I always start out shows just boom with a big punch, right? So the show is about healing and growth, unlocking your greatness, right? So how does one heal and grow and lead to unlocking their greatness?
Well, I think the question is, like, what's getting in the way of it first? And as I've deepened this work, what I realize is that a big part of it is societal conditioning. So we really love, especially if you think about growing up in school, anyone that was different is teased. And so what I found is that people that are the most caring, the most good, have the most amazing qualities, people who have gifts and amazing neurodivergences, their mind works a really particular way, are very often the people that are the most wounded, that have the lowest self-esteem, that have this belief, this feeling, this identity, something's wrong with me, I'm not good. And in my opinion, those are the very people that we need out there believing themselves, creating, extraordinary businesses, doing extraordinary things, and changing the world with this heart-led approach. So I think the short answer is undoing as much of that societal conditioning and wounding and pain as possible in my work, so that, incredible people can be out there sharing their gifts with the world and doing what they're truly meant to be doing.
Do you see it as societal, or is it more familial? Where does that pain come
It's
from?
everything. It's
It's everything.
everything. I think the societal comes into the familial, right? It's the societal ideas. I want my kids to do something that's socially perceived as successful, so I shame my kids for everything that isn't what I expect success to be. So I think it's everything has to change to get a different familial relationship. If the societal norm was to just embrace and celebrate the gifts in your children, like uncover who they truly are, then that familial dynamic would be different. And so I think it's kind of like a multi-leveled, multi-layered approach.
So success, that's an interesting word, right? For 47 years of my life, I equated success with money, right? So isn't it interesting how, talk about societal norms and familial norms, success still with most people is around money. Would you agree with that?
I think that that's the way that we think. I think that money is very often a response to success. And here's the thing, I think a lot of us still have this coding around success, like it's bad. Like people have, sometimes look at me like, oh, well, you're about helping people with success and business and stuff now, like that's bad, or that's less heart-led. And it's like, no, because we deserve to have success. We deserve to have financial freedom, time freedom. We're not here to work 60 hours a week and never get to spend time with our kids and our loved ones. All of that is part of success. And, there's this argument about, well, it's not very spiritual. And it's like, well, it is, because the spiritual world wants you to experience things. The spiritual world is nature. We go out there and it's like, you're meant to have beautiful experiences, to live a beautiful life. It's that we live in this world that's built by man that says, well, you have to have money to go and do those things. So it's not about playing one game or the other. It's about realizing that we live in a world of duality. And so what we want to break down is this binary of success means greed. Success means you're less heart-led. You're either poor and loving, or you're successful and wealthy and you're evil. It's like, no, we get to hold all of it together. We get to have success and help the world and have the experience of joy and freedom. And it gets to have a sense of ease and expansiveness, and you get to serve your purpose and collaborate with others. It's, it's really a whole new paradigm, a whole new world.
When I was growing up, my mom often used the term filthy rich. And about a year ago, about a year into my transformation, which was a year ago, I said to my mom, I go, Mom, why did you use that term? And she thought for a second. She goes, I don't know, but I know why. It's because her family and her generation were very low income, and they looked at the rich. It's filthy, it's dirty, but it's not like,
Yeah. And I love that you shared that example with your mom, because when we talk about the familial part, I think this is something changes when we get into that sort of next level awareness and growth. And I often break down the journey that people are in into the kind of 4 stages of self-actualization. And so stage 1 is very low awareness, that things that happened when we're young affected us, low or no awareness. And then stage 2 is when we start to gain some awareness, we start to realize, oh, mom saying that to me has given me this code that's actually blocking me from, success or money being good or whatever. And a lot of times at that first stage of awareness, there's actually a lot of anger, because all you have is the awareness that this affected you without any kind of meaningful tools to deal with it. As we move on from there, we move on to where we hear a lot of stuff in personal development world is about forgiveness. There's all this deep emotional work, forgiving your family, forgive, forgive, forgive. And that is important. Don't get me wrong, but there is another stage, because when we get to stage 4 of self-actualization, we're really stepping in to the fullest version of ourself, and we have an incredible level of awareness. What you start to realize is what you just said, is that that wasn't actually something that your mom did to you. That was almost something that was moving through her. And so you start to look at her as the beautiful, kind, loving mother that she is, who that was actually something that affected her. And so it's kind of becomes, it doesn't make sense to be mad or to need to forgive, because that's almost more of something that happened to her than who she was. And you sort of are able to look at it with gratitude that you are in a time and place and space that you get to have the awareness that you get to change.
Wow. So you just dropped some real gold nuggets. I mean, I think when I have you back on the show, if you'll come back, we're going to do a whole show just on those 4 stages of self-actualization. But you said some things earlier, so I'm going to hit those, and then we're going to come back to awareness. You mentioned that the first part of the podcast that children often are shunned for being unique. And as adults, uniqueness is what everyone wants. They want to stand out from the crowd, right? Do you think that there's any correlation between sensitivity and those type of children?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't even think that it's not just as adults. I think it's in this time. The education system was really built in a time where a lot of us were going to grow up to be factory workers. And so that's why it is the way it is. Is like, can you follow the rules? Can you do repetitive tasks? And now in today's world, especially with this new, like, it's going to get even more of this because AI is coming out. It's what we value is creativity, relationships, individuality, uniqueness. That's what companies pay top dollar to hire, people that can think differently, that are visionaries. And, even as entrepreneurs, being visionaries is literally the thing. So, but we didn't grow up with that. We grew up with, if you can't follow the rules, if you can't do this thing, if you're not good at math and science, and if you can't focus on this teacher who's literally the most boring thing in the world right now, there's something wrong with you. And what people don't understand is, I didn't really understand before I did all this training why therapy was so obsessed with childhood, and why it is it's your software, your core operating system. Your body and your brain's job is literally to write the core operating software from 0 to 7. We just download, write the core software. And so if the message that you always got is something's wrong with you, then that is literally part of the core function of how your mind is perceiving the world. And so you can be an adult, and you can be, this is where a lot of imposter syndrome comes from, which is really interesting. You can be creative, you can be celebrated, you can be having achievements, but each achievement doesn't feel like enough, partially because you've linked love to success. And so you actually look for validation rather than love, which is a whole can of worms. But also, because your mind is looking for proof that you're not good enough and something's wrong with you. So every celebration gets discounted, and every criticism and the thing is, criticism is feedback. We grow from feedback. The great moments give us confidence, and the difficult moments give us wisdom. But we can't take the wisdom from the difficult moments if all we feel is criticism and this sort of attack on our worthiness. So you've got to update the software to say, no, I am really good. I can take the feedback. I want the feedback, but that doesn't diminish my value. And then you just, you watch people who are really gifted and amazing, who are kind of like this hiding, just go out there and shine. And it's, it's incredible to watch.
I mean, man, this is some good stuff. I could talk about this for 24 hours. You really know your stuff. It's awesome to have you on the show. So we're going to go back to the awareness, which I think what you said was the first stage of actualization.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable how many people on this planet are walking around with drug addictions, obesity, bad marriages, shitty businesses. I mean, in a state of constant trigger, and they don't know that there's a reason. There's a reason, and it's that programming, the software you talked about from 0 to 7. They go to therapy, or they have been. I mean, I was in therapy for 30 years. Most of my clients have been in therapy, marriage counseling, and it focuses on the conscious mind and the symptoms. And so people have no idea when they're fighting with their wife or husband that it has nothing to do with the actual argument, and it has something to do from 0 to 7 when they are programmed. So when I had no awareness, the only way that I had awareness is because when I was on a call trying to get my son help, this performance coach said, "You have a tic, you blink a lot. So do you want to do some work? You probably have some unresolved childhood trauma." And I said, "Of course." And then in that 3-hour session, my entire life changed. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that. Do you find a lot of people who have gone through the same thing and just have no awareness that what's driving this behavior?
Yeah, well, I want to actually say, because you said, it's wild to think that, people are walking around asleep, but it's actually not wild if you understand people and the mind, because, something that we are taught to look at is what's good about it. And so what I always think is, what's the payoff? What's the payoff for this behavior? And the payoff for having zero awareness is that nothing's your fault. If you never take on the awareness, then you get to be a victim forever. Everything happened to you. Life is happening to you. Your relationship's happening to you. And you never have to take responsibility. And so the thing about getting from stage 1 to stage 2 is it's actually very difficult. It very often takes a really special moment, or like rock bottom is one of the times. That's why people will hit rock bottom with addictions, and then they start getting help and taking it seriously, because it's that wake up call. We literally call it a wake up call that wakes up more awareness. But you see, the thing is, you can't acknowledge what we're talking about. I just saw the banner come up. We can't acknowledge what we're talking about without at the same time realizing that you are now responsible for your life. And the thing is, the bigger the mess is, the scarier it is to realize that you're responsible. And I'm not saying that people didn't get dealt different hands, because of course they did. But all of that becomes irrelevant, because at some point you have to realize that wherever you are the one that has control over where your life goes. And so you are responsible, and you have to become able to move your life in a different direction. And so it's this kind of balance between the payoff of, if I don't wake up, if I don't become aware, nothing ever has to be my fault. And I can just say, I was a victim and all of this happened to me, and woe is me, versus, okay, there's this terrifying moment that I actually start to look at the world differently. I start to gain this awareness, and in gaining the awareness, I have to realize I am now responsible for what happens in my life. So It's kind of this first hoop you have to jump through, and it's quite a big hoop.
And it's scary for a lot of people.
It's terrifying. Scary. It is scary. Yeah.
So if you're listening to this and you're like, I wonder why I have all these problems. Everything comes down to thinking, and it's the thinking that's created from 0 to 7. So a couple of months ago, I created this quiz. It only takes about 3 minutes, and it will literally give you awareness. If you go to bradchandler.com/love, it's 12 questions, and it will tell you whether you have extreme self-love, mild self-love, or lack of self-love. And you can tie everything back to what we're saying. It always, almost 99.8% of the time, will go back to that 0 to 7 time frame. So go ahead and take the quiz if you'd like, bradchandler.com/love. So Michael, you've got quite a story. What is that story?
So I was actually talking about creative, unique people. I was actually a dancer and a choreographer. I kind of started in high school with that, and then people ridiculed me and were like, "Oh, yeah, it's not a real career." But I went out and I made it a career, and I was very successful. And I traveled the world, and I did all kinds of amazing things. And it's so interesting because I did all of these things, but I really was that person who felt not enough. And so although I was celebrated all the time, I really felt not enough inside. And it's interesting because people have reflected back to me like, I always thought you were great. And it's so interesting because people saw me like that, but I did not feel great on the inside. And so there came a season where I knew that my journey with dance was ending. I knew I was meant to do more. I'd always felt like I was supposed to become some kind of healer. And it was kind of a couple of, things. I moved away from the city. I had a relationship end, and I was kind of in a really dark place. And I ended up living in my mom's basement. And it was interesting because now not having all of the celebration from the outside from dance and that not enoughness really caught up with me. And it was a really, really dark time. And I'd always been into personal development and mindset. I mean, you can't do anything at that high of a level without understanding some, performance psychology. But
Right.
I think I was maybe Googling personal development stuff. And so the algorithm showed me Marisa Peer on YouTube. And my first thought, to be honest, was there's no way this one British woman has everything so much more figured out than everyone else. But I started to listening to her, and I started talking to myself differently. I started listening to her every single morning, and I started to feel better, and my life started to change. And then I found out that she, trained these therapists, and I went and had a session with someone, and same, I had been in therapy and done all this stuff. And I had one session, and it just changed everything for me. Such deep self-understanding, deep awareness, and then just shifting, the behaviors. And my first feeling was, how do people not know about this? Like, the world needs to know about
That's what
this,
I say all the time. Like, I'm
All
going
of
to
them,
yell
how do
from the
you not know,
mountaintops. Like,
right?
you don't need to go through 30 years of therapy. It can be hours and everything can be fixed.
Yeah. Yeah, and so, the combination of that season and this feeling that I always was meant to help people, this interest in psychology, it was just like, is this it? Like, am I going to do it? And of course, people thought I was crazy back then. I was like, I think this is it. This is it. This is my thing. Like, this is going to be my thing. And, here we are a couple of years later, and it just, I've blown up in kind of therapy world, and now I'm becoming more known in the coaching industry as well, and just all this stuff is happening all the time. I have high profile clients that I never could have dreamt that I would be working with. And yeah, like we were talking about before, just my business is somewhere I just never thought it could be in this amount of time. But it's been extraordinary, and I love every day of it.
Amazing story. So, in a very short time period, you went from a really deep, dark place to this
Yeah.
amazing life, right?
Yeah.
And how did you do it? Like, it's called rapid transformational therapy. But what was it that therapy, all those years of therapy, didn't do?
I think just didn't get to the root of anything that was going on, or didn't make any kind of meaningful change, and like, I honestly don't even know what we were doing. I said this to Marissa once when I was with her. I said, I think I get more out of an RTT intake than I did out of years of therapy, because we never actually set, like, what is it that you want? What is it that you don't want? What would your life look like if you had what you want and not what you don't want? Like, that alone, I've had people cry in an intake because they've been through 2 years of counseling around anxiety, and they've never actually been asked that question. And you see, if you understand anything about the mind, you would know that part of the solution is always, what do you want? Because otherwise the mind doesn't understand don't, it doesn't understand negative. So you can't focus on not anxiety. You can't focus on not sadness. You can only move towards things. So you have to, this part of the solution is to focus on what you want. And so when people can't answer that question, they've been doing work for years, and you're like, I don't even know what I want. It just, there's the first step. So it was a lot of RTT for me. And I often say RTT is like my secret weapon. I still today, I've had probably 12, 13 sessions now. And I still, if I hit a block, because what's interesting is, you clear out all of the sort of mental health stuff and all of the sadness stuff. But then when you push into new discomfort zones, especially with, business and visibility and all these things, new fears and new blocks come up. So it's like you level up and fight the boss like in a video game, right? So it's like you have your level 1 problems, and then you fight the level 1 boss, and then you have level 2 problems, and you level up to level 2, and then you fight the level 2 boss. Well, the level 10 boss is more intense. So very often when you get to level 10 problems, life block, whatever, there's kind of a new thing, or it's always really a reemergence of an old thing in kind of a new way. And I always will go and have an RTT session, and I do a lot of other healing work as well. Like I'm very conscious about my thoughts. There's a lot of deep emotional intelligence work that I've kind of brought into my practice. But it really is that deciding, oh, there's a block here. Oh, I have the awareness to recognize something's holding me back. Let me go and get RTT'd on this, or let me focus on this. Let me figure out what this pattern is and let me shift it. Because once you understand that you can change and the ways that you can change, it really doesn't make sense to plateau or get stuck anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I've lived it too. It was a 3-hour session where my whole life changed. It wasn't actually RTT, but it was really, really close. And so just like
Yeah.
you said, I came home from this weekend and I'm like, hey, everybody, you don't have to suffer. Life isn't about suffering. It's about joy. And these last 2 years have been so happy. And it seems like each day I'm making new strides and I'm breaking through and I'm getting more and more happy. So it is just wonderful. And you can experience the same exact thing in a matter of hours. So Michael, tell us more about what do you do now?
So what's really interesting is that I had a lot of unresolved trauma. And so when I started this, I was really stepping into my own deep healing. And so I was really a match for people that were in that same place. I kind of became the trauma guy at first. And for probably about 8 months, that was really what I was focused on. And it was amazing, really. And I'm sure we can talk more about that. But it kind of got to this place. I was like, okay, like I'm getting pretty healed now. And now I want to do, I want to build my business. I want to have more impact. I want to have more reach. I want to, see like, what can I do now that I'm free? The thing is, once all this brain space and time and energy isn't being taken up by being sad and having all these problems, it's like, wow, like what can we actually become? And so then I started to realize that there's all of these other blocks and issues and things that happen at this level. And so I started to get coaching and do my own work around that. And it was kind of, as I moved myself through the journey of self-actualization, I realized that there's stuff at every level. And the amazing thing is because I started at stage 1 myself and then moved through it and have helped people with the phenomenal tools that we have with hypnosis and RTT. And I do coaching as well. Through this journey, it's like you really start to see the patterns. I can tell in a few minutes of talking to someone exactly where they are in their journey and where the work is. So as we get because so much is kind of focused on helping people at stage 1 and stage 2, what I found is that there's actually less people at this sort of stage 3 and 4 helping people, so someone who already is pretty happy, has a pretty great life, has already built, say a multi-million-dollar business, but wants to do something. I have one friend and client she wants to build this extraordinary charity that I feel like, I think it's in Mexico, but feeds, I think it's like a million homeless people or people that are, living with, and she's using her business, her multi-million-dollar business, to fuel this. And she's blocked with visibility and she's blocked with some stuff. And so she comes to me and it's like, she's already happy. She's already done the mindset work. She's already got a great life. She's already got the money, but it's like, there's something holding back from the next level. And that's where the being an investigator at that level, it's like, ooh, let me use my super tools. And that's for me too, because it's really interesting. This is new. This is different. And so, I mean, I do still help everyone through the journey. For me, the stage 1 and 2 stuff is kind of done more in a group setting because I've done that so much. I've really kind of mastered that and I know the patterns. So I love, actually, I have a membership now where people can kind of come for a year and we work on all the kinds of stuff that kind of move us from stage 1 and 2 to stage 3 and 4. And then, yes, my one-to-one and my masterminds and stuff are really about people that are in stage 3 and 4. And I'm not just interested in, helping some pharmaceutical guy have more wealth. I'm really interested in people that want to do good for the world, who are, like I said, divergence and kind of disruptors of the ways that things are, that are embracing this duality. It's like science and spirituality together, wealth and generosity together, kindness and self-respect together. Those kinds of people, I want to help them be more and do more and break through those limitations. So that's what my practice has become about.
That is awesome. How do people reach you?
You can find me. Everything is michaeledwards.live. So my Instagram is at michaeledwards.live. I'm michaeledwards.live on Facebook, and my website is also www.michaeledwards.live.
So you mentioned hypnosis, and you and I know that hypnosis is a big part of what we both do to help people grow and get out of this the rut or the struggle. I think early on you mentioned to me that early on before when we talked that people really doubted or had some skepticism around hypnosis. What was that about?
Yeah, it's so funny in the beginning, isn't it? It's I think it's so unfamiliar to people. And there's this part of me that even in the beginning of my business was like, well, do we call it something different? Do we call it meditation? But it's like, no, it is hypnosis. And I think it's easier to start with what hypnosis isn't, which is not stage hypnosis. We're not talking about, thinking that you're a chicken or falling in love with a fire hydrant. We're talking about it in a therapeutic setting. And the whole conversation of can or can't I be hypnotized is completely moot, because what it is an alpha theta brainwave. It's a completely natural state. It's the same state that we pass through when we're waking up in the morning and when we're falling asleep at night. And what's special, and they're studying this now, and of course there's so much, but there's so much ego in science. They can't just call it hypnosis. They can't just call it meditation. So they're calling it NSDR, which stands for non-sleep deep rest, which is essentially meditation slash hypnosis. And what's interesting is that your mind is more able to change, you're more able to accept suggestion, and you're able to process emotions in a way that you're not able to in your conscious state. And so all we're doing in hypnosis or hypnotherapy is tapping into that completely natural state, that relaxed state in your body, so that when we go through some of these things, when we reflect on some of these things, and when we process those unprocessed emotions from childhood, that we're able to do it on a deep level that lands. And you see, it's that landing on a deep level that makes all of this work. Many people, especially when we talk about people at stage 3 and 4, they've already conceptualized all of the work. So they've already unpacked their childhood. They've already got the awareness. They've already done the stuff with the family, but there's still this about it. And so very often at this stage of awareness, I'll guide someone through an RTT session, and it's not necessarily that it's like groundbreaking new stuff that they didn't already know, but they felt it. To say my parents yelled at me and that gave me this, anxiety, or that gave me this feeling that I'm not going to, is very different than actually it's like time travel, going back to being 7, feeling what it felt like to be that 7-year-old you when your mom was just screaming at you and you were like, I just wish that she would love me. And of course, as kids, we internalize everything. So it's the feeling of, if my mom's screaming at me and doesn't feel like she loves me, it must be because I'm not lovable. And to not just conceptualize it, but to go on a journey and feel that feeling, and then understand it with your adult mind and realize that the story that something was wrong with you actually isn't true, and that your mom was just really, really stressed out because she was terrible with money and time management. And so that wasn't true. That's a belief code. We can deal with that. And that the feeling that you internalized actually isn't the you that you are now. You're not loved by your mom, and the very idea of wanting to be loved by someone else in the way you want it to be loved by your mom isn't necessary, because an adult, you're the only one that can give you that love. That's an emotional code being updated. And so when you feel that emotion, you can respond to it as the adult conscious you that you are now, versus always going back to being that 7-year-old who just wanted their mom to love you. And then the deepest part of that is the identity code, which is something's wrong with me. And so when you update that and realize nothing was wrong with you, you just internalize that. And because that was part of your software, you've been making that real your whole life. And that actually the 7-year-old you is just a memory, and the you that you are now is what's real. And you kind of flip the script on the identity. When you hit all those 3 things together, the beliefs, the emotions, and the identity, it will change your whole life.
Boom. I love it. Yeah. Freedom comes from only one thing, in my opinion, and that's self-love. And we lack self-love. We weren't born with lack of self-love, but we lack it because of that programming that we talked
We
about.
learned it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone's
And
out there and they're
I think it's important to talk about what, we use that word so easily. It's so easy for us to use the word self-love because we've been through this whole process. But, to someone that doesn't have self-love, let's paint a picture. It's waking up in the morning and snoozing your alarm clock 10 times, feeling like you have sandbags on your chest because you'd rather just be asleep than live your life. It's walking into the bathroom and going, ugh, like so fat, I'm so gross, there's something wrong. Just let me put on a hoodie so I don't have to see my, it's walking out into the kitchen. Maybe your space is a mess because you just don't care enough to take care of yourself. It's walking outside and just feeling like you want to be invisible. And feeling, because that is so familiar to you and that's the only way you've ever known life to be, that that's just what life is. That's what everyone feels. And then the flip side of that, being someone who wakes up in the morning before their alarm with like sunshine in their heart, who can't wait to get out of bed, who looks in the mirror and goes, "Ah, you look good." Even if you put on some pounds from prison, you're like, "Oh, it's like, you look great. You look great." You know, looking at yourself and like, you're doing good, man. Walking into your kitchen and making yourself that healthy food that makes you feel good because you love yourself so much that it only makes sense that you would want to take care of yourself. And then going out into the world and not wanting to be seen for validation, but just like wanting to share the celebration of yourself in a loving, beautiful way with the people that are around you. And that's a whole different experience of life. That's what self-love gives you, not just what it is.
Yes. And if you're in between those two extremes, like I was, and I had no idea, and you want to figure it out, like just go take my quiz at bradchandler.com/love. So, Michael, we're going to wrap up with something. You've helped a lot of people in this world change their lives, and now they're changing people's lives. And I love your mission about helping people, like you said, not just a pharmaceutical person become more wealthy. You're helping people that want to make a difference in this world. I freaking love that. So you've helped a lot of people. Can you pick one client success story that just is really stands above and beyond, where someone came in and was just so struggling or suffering and then just turned around and their life has been completely different?
Yeah, I mean, the one that's coming to mind recently is I actually met this lady in a mastermind that I was in recently, and she already had quite a successful business. And I think she actually came for, I can't remember if it was anxiety or fear of driving, or it was linked. It was really this like this fear and the stress around driving, and I think being in public. And you know, it went back, as it so often does, to all of this sense of overwhelm when she was young, you know, really unpredictable parents, unpredictable things, this feeling of being not safe. And so what's happening now is that when she's in the car, she has this feeling of unpredictability, unsafe, but you see, she's not experiencing it as the she that she is now. She's regressing to, you know, a 6-year-old whose parents just used to come home screaming, or, you know, would leave her in the car unattended, and, you know, some weird guy would come. And so she's flashing back. She's actually not experiencing life as herself. She's flashing back to her 6-year-old self. And it feels like, you know, the idea of courage or the idea of being able to take things on isn't even possible, because it still feels like a 6-year-old trying to take on an adult world. And so through the session, we led her through, you know, this understanding and looking at, you know, that was you when you were 6, but you, as the beautiful adult woman that you are now, you are more than capable to respond to everything in your life. And it's this response that's making you feel powerless, but you actually are very powerful. And of course, you know, we're doing this in hypnosis. There's a really way to do it, to crack all of the codes. And again, you've got to hit beliefs, emotions, and identity to make it really stick at a deep level. And so we updated that. But what was amazing about her is that not only was she actually messaged me, and she, you know, she said 2 days later, she said, not only me in the car, but I was so relaxed, I fell asleep in the car when my husband was driving. And she said, she was mind blown. And so we'll call that a huge success for the session. But what was amazing is she didn't even realize all these other places that this fear was holding her back. And what she realized is that she actually wanted to do this whole other thing than she was doing, which is, again, more impactful for the world, which is more thing that was helping people. And so she didn't actually have the courage, or she couldn't face the fear, rather, to go out and do it. And so not only did she get rid of the fear of driving and the anxiety about being in public, but she is now launching this whole new vision for her life, for her business, for everything. And so it's like this beautiful person who had these unique gifts and this whole thing that she could create for the world, didn't just have anxiety, but was blocked from sharing what she was meant to share because of all of this stuff holding her back. And, you know, she just messaged again. And it's so funny because she was very vocal about it in this mastermind. So everyone in there knew. I had so many clients come from that, because she had that session. Then other people in the mastermind had sessions, and then they were all sharing, oh my God, I had experience with Michael, it changed my life. It changed my life. But, you know, what's amazing is that people often come for this one thing, but when you really deal with the root like we do, it's like a domino effect. It can change so many parts of someone's life. So
It really is. It really is incredible. I mean, that's awesome. Awesome stuff. Anything you
yeah.
want to leave us with that you
I think
haven't said?
I think yeah, I think just the awareness that change is possible. And what I'm really interested in as well is when we're at stage 2 and stage 3, it's really the time of comfort. And what I hear from you is like you were in, we're in different stages in different parts of our lives. So we can have like stage 1 emotional intelligence, but sort of, let's say stage 3 success or stage 3, whatever. So a lot of people get into this place where they're comfortable, they're living and they're doing, I wouldn't even say they're surviving. They're doing pretty good, but they're not thriving. And I think a lot of people get into that and they feel like that's all that there is. And it's funny. I often call this the dishwasher zone because it's like this is the place where people are in their life and they're having to go to therapy and they're having to have these conversations about like the dishwasher and all these things. And it's like there's more. There's a whole nother level of growth, of awareness, of expansion, of experience that you can step into. And if you're stuck on these really, really, I don't want to be judgmental, but kind of mundane things, there's more that's available to you. No couple that has an extraordinary vision for life and is, building this extraordinary vision together is having fights about stuff like the dishwasher. It just doesn't happen because you become
Yeah.
teammates when you're aligned to a bigger vision. So I think, if you're in that place and you're comfortable, but you just have this itching feeling where you feel like there could be more or you're capable of more, I want you to really challenge and go into that because there probably is more. We're never given a desire without being given the ability to realize it. So there is more for you and more is possible. And so I think that'd be
Amazing.
my final
Amazing.
message.
So I think it's really it becomes a lot easier to find your life purpose after you've done the work and after you clear
Yes.
out that programming that's holding you back. And secondly, I had a conversation just like 3 hours ago about I envision this. So I've been in a relationship now for 6 months, and it's so far different than any relationship I was ever in before I transformed when I didn't feel worthy. Because when you've got two people fighting for their worth, this is what usually happens. So
Mm-hmm.
I have this concept now of could you be in a long-term relationship with someone where these arguments never happen? You have conflict, of course, but you're not arguing. There's no yelling. There's no like you. And I think it's possible because just like you said, we're on a similar vision aligned now, helping people grow and helping people transform their lives. And I don't know. I look at conflict in a whole different way. I almost welcome it because it's an opportunity for me to heal, her to heal, and then for us to grow together. So
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's what happens when we're both whole people. When we look for someone else to complete, you see, validation is a one-way street, whereas love is a two-way channel. And so if we've got any stuff that's messed up around love, we look for validation instead of love. Validation is taking energy. It's Brad, can you please validate me? Can you please validate me? Can you tell me again how great I am? Can you tell me again? It's a taking energy. And so me trying to get validation from you lets you feel drained from that interaction. Whereas love is a two-way channel. It's I give and receive, I give and receive. And so we can praise each other, there can be love, but we both come out of that feeling nourished. And
love
so,
it.
right? And so it's in the relationship, if we're both loving ourselves first, like we talked about, then it's like there's a two-way channel of giving, receiving from both people. But if one person is looking for the other person to complete something in their life, then that's not really love, it's validation, which is a taking energy. And we don't want anything where there's taking in a relationship over time doesn't feel good. So it really, when you get into the nuance of this, it's fascinating to
Yeah.
kind of unpack and explore.
And I did that for 47 years. I looked for something out to validate to make me feel better. And now that I don't need to do that, I can be closer. It's just an amazing thing. So if you have trouble in your relationship, don't look towards the other person. Look at the relationship that you have with yourself, because that's where the real problem is. It's not the actual relationship.
Yeah, and
Michael,
it's funny that you're saying this actually because I was just reflecting on this. I feel like something I always really wanted was just this vision for just having these amazing friends where like I just love them so much and they're like my chosen family and they love me. And I've found that now here. It's just just so many parts of my life are indescribably amazing, but it's not because I went out and found it. It's because I became a match for those kinds of people because I love myself. And so now I'm a match for people who also love themselves, and they celebrate themselves, and I celebrate them, and they celebrate me. And it's beautiful, And so I think even in the relationship conversation, the way we traditionally think about it is like, how do I get someone great? Which again is like that taking energy versus like, how do I become a match for the thing that I want? And then it only makes sense to have that person, those people, that experience, even that money is a similar concept in your life. So anyways, I know I'm kind of like going off on a tangent now, but
Oh, I love this stuff. We could talk about it forever. So if you want to join us happypreneurs in an amazing Facebook group, just go to bradchandler.com/Facebook, and you will be invited to How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs Facebook group. And of course, we're going to wrap here another edition of How to Be Happier for Entrepreneurs. And if you like this show, please share it, please like it, please subscribe, whatever you want to do with it, just get it out there, because we need to spread the word that you don't have to suffer and you don't have to go through years of therapy. You just heard us. In a matter of like 3 to 5 hours, your life can radically change for the better. So Michael, thank you so much. That was amazing.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye now.
Hit subscribe if you don't want to miss out on more life-changing content. And if you're struggling, you don't have to. Go to bradchandler.com/contact. There, you can join the Facebook community of like-minded entrepreneurs, and you'll see a button to schedule your freedom and happiness call. See you on the next episode.